Oh my God, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm Catherine, and this is Off Topic with Catherine, where stories spill over, lessons get learned, life gets messy, just like it should. And you know what? Summer's hit in Montreal. It's beautiful out there today. It's like, I think, 28 or 29. So I'm dressed for it finally. Anyways, welcome to my episode today. And today we are going to be talking a little bit about dementia. Now, I didn't really know what that was. I had heard of the word Alzheimer's, but I didn't really know what dementia was until my mom was diagnosed with it. Now, it was sometime in 2008, 2007. My parents had gone to Greece and they came back. And they were sitting in my living room, and my mom turns around and looks and says, "Hey, what happened to my frames?" And at that moment, I said, "Mom, what do you mean, what happened to your frames? You're not in your house, you're in my house." And she said, "What? No, I'm not." I said, "Yes, Mom, this is my home." Now, we lived across from each other, but our homes were very different inside. Decorations, the way we lived. And at that moment, I felt, I just kind of felt this thing inside, like, oh, well, what happened? Is she jet lagged? Why is she so confused? But I kind of felt this little tingling of fear. I wasn't really sure what it was. And after that, I just sort of said, no, she's fine. She's going to be okay. Until the days progressed, the months progressed. And we started getting a little bit more and more concerned because she kept repeating things. Now, of course, it's very difficult for loved ones. It was very difficult for me. It was very, very difficult for my dad, who was her primary caregiver, and it was very difficult for my brother. And we all had our own version of how we should do things, how we should go about handling the situation, and how we should speak to her. And none of us were experts. I think we were just trying to do our best with what we could. Now, for my dad, it was very difficult. And he kept saying to me, "You know what? If she's telling you something and it's not accurate, just correct her. Just tell her that that's not what it is." When in fact, that's not what you should do. When somebody is struggling with dementia or Alzheimer's or, anything of the sort, you have to meet them where they're at. You have to agree with them because that's where they are at, and that is what their thoughts are telling them. In order to help my dad a little bit more with understanding what was happening to my mom, I had scheduled an appointment with a social worker, a Greek social worker, to kind of better help him go through this. And so I remember going with him and sitting down and having, I think it was like over an hour and a half session. And I was thinking that my dad was understanding what the social worker was telling us both in terms of what we're going to be dealing with in the future and what we should be doing in the meantime to help my mom. And the minute we walked out of the office, my dad said to me, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to help your mom remember. I'm going to tell her that this is not the way it is, and I'm going to help her snap out of it. That's what he thought he could do. Of course, that's not what happened. And my brother too. I mean, he would just, tell mom that that's not the way it is. It'll help her remember. And so we all tried to do things our own way. But, dementia is not something that we can help somebody snap out of. So as hard as it was, very, very difficult, we did find some moments where we could actually really laugh together and try to find humor because, at that point, there's really not much else you can do, as you know that you are slowly, day by day, losing that person. And just to share, a little bit about some moments. I remember, and I laughed because, she was so beautiful at the same time. And it was quite funny, I have to admit. I remember one time sitting on the couch with my dad, and we're watching this Greek program. And my mom must have been about 85 at that time. And the Greek president was making an announcement from Greece. So my mom says, hey, I know that man. And we said, you do? She says, yes, I know him. He must have been like 30, 35 at that time. And my mom was 85. And we said, Mom, how do you know him? She says, well, I know him because we went to elementary school together. So my dad and I looked at each other. We wanted to crack up. I mean, yes, I know it's sad, but it was really funny. And we said, well, what's his name? She says, well, his name is Yanni, John. We said, okay. So we just kind of went through it. I mean, it passed. It was quite cute. And then, every time I'd go in when the disease had progressed, and I'd go visit her, I'd say, hi, Mom, how are you? Do you remember me? And she'd say, yes, you're my sister. You're my cousin. Okay, sure, I'm your sister, I'm your cousin. Or the times where my daughter and I would go visit her and we'd be sitting in the back and she had like a little garden and she'd be staring into the garden and, we'd ask her, what do you see, Mom? What do you see? And she'd say, well, there you see that. That's my neighbor who's taking care of the donkeys. You see the donkeys? There were no donkeys. Obviously, there were no donkeys. She says, you see that donkey? Well, he's hopping on that donkey to go fetch some water from the well. They hadn't had a well in like 50 years. We weren't even in Greece. But, we just went along with it, and that was her little world. Now, since my dad had decided to keep her at home, and at the time we were trying to convince him, we didn't convince him, to place her in a home because it started to get a lot more challenging for him and a lot more demanding. He refused. And I remember, my brother and I just, tried to encourage him to do that in order for him to live a better quality of life, because he had to be there all the time. And even though we tried to get help to come in, my mom would become very aggressive, so nobody would stay to help her out even for a couple of hours. And that was the situation. Now, what would happen is my dad would end up, she would physically go and remove all the frames off the wall, literally, and bring them all down. And this was every day. Every day she unplugged all the appliances. She would push the fridge, push the stove. Where did she get that strength? She did. And she would unplug everything, so my dad would have to replug it. She would take everything out of the drawers. I mean, this was every day as she had progressed in her illness. And she would put all her belongings, clothes and all, in plastic bags and luggages because she was leaving. She was traveling. In her mind, she would be traveling. This was every day. So every day I would go in, I'd say, Dad, just leave her bags be. I mean, she's just going to do the same thing. As night falls, as we call sundowning. And he says, well, I can't. I live here. I can't, live amongst this, frames on the floor and everything unplugged and loads of bags. So he had made it his life to do that. And sometimes, as calm as it was, I could see him sort of lose a bit of his patience. And then that guilt would start to stir up. And he'd say, I don't want to get angry, but I just can't take it. So it was a very challenging time for him, and of course for us. When I remember I lived further away from him, I remember getting a call one night, and he says, "Can you please come here?" And it was quite late, but I had told him, if there's ever anything, just please call me. Don't hesitate. So I said, what's wrong? He says, oh, it's your mom again. I said, is she okay? Well, just please come over. So I get into my car, I drive there, and what do I see? She had started the laundry machine. I don't know how she even did that because she didn't know how to start any appliance. But somehow she must have pushed all these buttons. And so the washing machine had filled up with water. And something triggered in her mind, and she's looking at the water in the washing machine, and she's getting very upset with it. So she had taken a bucket that actually fit into the machine, and she was emptying all the water on the linoleum floor, all of it. And we just couldn't make her understand, and she became quite hysterical. And she started telling us that it was like she was in the water. She was on the beach. She was in Greece. And we're thinking, oh my gosh, how do we get her to stop? And I called my son. My son came over. So it was my dad and myself and my son. And we're in a flood zone in our home because she was convinced that she had to take all this water out of the machine and put it on the floor because she needed to, I don't know, swim or do something on it. So just a few, examples of what that was like. And for those of us who do live with loved ones, it is very, very hard to be in a situation like that. But it's very, very hard also to place our loved ones in a home unless we absolutely are left with no choice, because we love them so, so, so much. And so that's what it was like. Now, when the diagnosis came, it was, oh my gosh, what does that mean? Is she going to be okay? Well, of course, if we've lived with that or know people that lived with that, we know how the progression goes. Now, I remember that my dad wasn't feeling good at a certain point, and we had to go to the hospital. And he gets diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Now, this is May 2015. So he gets diagnosed with pancreatic stage 4 cancer, and my brother and I, look at each other. Oh my golly, what do we do? Mom can't stay alone at home, and my dad has got stage 4 cancer. And the doctor, basically told us he had like 3 to 4 months to live. Very accurate, 4 months to the day. So we needed to prepare. We needed to prepare ourselves. I can't even imagine what my dad was going through, the heartache. And I remember my dad saying, I want her to go first. And when he said that, I said, Dad, I want her to go first because I just want to know that nobody's going to hurt her, because I know how much I took care of her. And he was right. I mean, he just did everything for her. He loved her the best way he could, and boy, did he ever. And in his mind, as if she went first, then he would be at peace, knowing that nobody would ever hurt her, disappoint her in any way. That didn't happen. Actually, my mom lived for 16 years after my dad passed away. But it was Mother's Day 2015 when my dad finally got admitted into the hospital. And my brother and I told my mom that she was going to visit her old home here in Montreal, the first home that she ever knew, because that was the only way to get her out of the house and bring her to a home, to the home that she would be in for the next 16 years until she died. And I remember that my brother, was trying to get her to get dressed and put her in his car so we could drive her there. And she just refused. And then when we said, Mom, we're going to your home on the street. And this is a home that she moved in the 60s. And she remembered that so well. And she was so happy that she got immediately dressed. And we put her in the car and we took her to the home. And that's where she was for the next 16 years. So visiting her at that home, of course, she deteriorated as the days and the months and the years went by. We'd try to get those few moments and those few seconds from hours of remembering. It went down to minutes, it went down to seconds until it didn't exist anymore. But I always felt that I could talk to her, so I would go there and I would sit with her even when she was immobile. She was lying down, and I would just tell her my life. I don't know, she couldn't judge me, and at the same time, she was always my mom. always. And I remembered and I realized thereafter that, when someone has dementia, you slowly say goodbye in pieces, but it's over many, many years. And so when my mom died, my daughter and I were there, and I said to her, I just don't feel the way I felt when my dad died, when he was diagnosed and he got sick and he died right away. And I said, because you slowly lose, this wonderful person that you love so much, slowly, that it kind of happens in ways that you don't even realize. And so in my mind, she's actually still always there somewhere in the clouds. I don't know, somewhere. So for those of us who have lived this experience, who will be living this experience, as hard as it is, there are moments of joy, moments. I know. You're saying when, where, how. There are. I know I lived them. And because even those times where, she was saying things that were a little bit bizarre, those were things that she actually lived in her life. They were hers. They belonged to her. She owned them. So that's why they were so precious. That's my story today. And thank you for listening to it and listening to my experience while living with my mom who had dementia. That probably lasted for over 18 years, quite a long time. And I think that's because my dad loved her so much. And that's why she hung on for so long. And then that was followed by my brother and I, who we were there all the time at that home. So just keep that in mind. Let's not forget them. So today's Greek coffee wisdom is this. When we visit our loved one and we look into their eyes and we often see this blank stare, just remember that somewhere in there, they're still there. And remember to call them by their name. My mom's name was Margarita. And every time I would call her name, even though she wouldn't respond immediately, I knew somewhere in there she knew that was her. So remember to call them by their name, to give them a gentle touch, because they love that. And to know that they are always, always with us. Now, thank you for listening to my episode today. And just remember, life's a little better when you go off topic. Thank you.